Hi, I'm Danny Ramos, and welcome to this week's edition of Hispanics Speak Out TV, brought to you every week on Spectrum Cable. We broadcast statewide. Our responsibility is to inform the community about issues that is pertinent to their well-being and social development. And today I'm here with Maria Mason, and she is the president of the Puerto Rican Bar Association. In case you don't know what bar is, the Puerto Rican Bar Association is a group of lawyers statewide that have a nonprofit organization, and they use it to dialogue and do things that are beneficial to the community. And she's here to talk about the amendments that are being proposed to the Constitution, state of Florida, is that correct? For November, things that you have to decide and vote on. Some are good for you, some are bad for you, depending on who you are. And some of them will affect your income and your future. So she's trying to inform the community about some of these issues. Marie, why don't you take the Homestead Act first?
Yes, I wanted to also clarify the Constitutional Revision Commission is a body that is appointed by the governor, and it is typically composed of people who are of a specific political inclination. It was created in 1968, and it has typically been a Republican commission. Except for one.
People that write these proposals?
Yes, it has to convene every 20 years in order to make sure that the Constitution of Florida is updated or up to date or reflective of what the needs of the state are. It has to meet, adopt rules, examine the Constitution, hold public hearings so people can go and express what they feel about the amendments that they are proposing. And then finally, they submit the amendments. These amendments obviously are open to challenge. So if there is a group or organization or citizen group that is opposing any of these, they have the right to go to court and challenge those in court so that they are not placed on the ballot, which is what's happened to a few of these amendments. There were 13 initially proposed. One of them got struck or stricken in court, and so that's no longer going to be on the ballot. So we will be looking at 12 as of the date of this recording when we go to the ballots.
Let me backpedal. Let me backpedal a little bit. So you're saying the governor appoints all the people that make the determination of what these amendments will say?
Correct.
And they're all Republicans?
Not necessarily. It's arguably a little bit more diverse, but typically it's been a Republican commission.
Well, if they're appointed by the governor, I would think that he wants to appoint people that are sensitive to his persuasion.
Correct. And when we had a Democratic governor, there were more Democrats in the commission. As of right now, this commission had 37 members. Initially, the very first commission was all men, one woman. They were all whites, and they were all Republican. In 2018, we have 37 members, 15 of which are women, 6 of which are Hispanic, and 6 of which are African American.
Well,
so, you know, it's a lot more diverse than when it started in 1968. So one of the first amendments, the number one actually, is the proposed increase in $25,000 in what's called the homestead exemption. So if you own a home that's $100,000 to $125,000 in value, then they're proposing that your homestead, or the part that is protected, is increased from $50,000 to $75,000. So if you want to protect your homestead, then you would vote yes on that amendment. Another one that's relevant is number 4. There's a lot of discussion, has been a lot of discussion about that, which is proposing to restore the voting rights of former felons. This excludes sex offenders and murderers, but for the most part, there's a system in place that would restore the voting rights of a felon once they have served their time, but it takes, or could take, up to 10 years for that restoration process to go through. And so the proposed amendment is to make sure that once you've served your time and you're not a sex offender or a murderer, you can go right to vote and exercise your right. There's another amendment that would require, number 5, a 2/3 vote of the legislature to approve any increased taxes or fees. Right now, the legislature, for example, if we had 100 members, 51% would win to increase your taxes. We're going to make it difficult, or this proposal wants to make it more difficult for the legislature, because now they would need 66% of the vote in order to increase fees or taxes. I wanted also to say the CRC is only one way in which we can get amendments on the ballot, right? We could do whatever the CRC proposes, the legislature can propose changes to be included in the ballot, and any citizen group can start an initiative to put amendments to the Constitution on the ballot. So these first ones were all done through the legislature and through citizen initiatives. Now, the Commission's proposals start here. The number 6, Amendment number 6, is the one that would expand the victims' rights, and it would create new requirements for judges to take into consideration when they're dealing with a criminal case. So if you're in favor of increasing the victims' rights, then you would vote yes on that one. This one would also increase the mandatory retirement age of judges from 70 to 75. It depends on whether you want older judges ruling on your cases or not. Another amendment that's relevant to the Hispanic community would be if you're an environmentalist. Amendment number 9 would prohibit oil drilling beneath Florida waters or waters that are controlled by Florida. It would prohibit the use of e-cigarettes and vaping in indoor places.
Is that part of the same?
It's part of the same amendment. But you know, the bundling of these issues, if you notice, one thing doesn't have to necessarily do with the other, drilling waters with vaping. This bundling issue is what's challenged in court. And right now, amendment number 9 is in court in Leon County in Tallahassee because of the bundling. It's confusing, and what it causes is for people to read maybe the first part of the paragraph, not understand what it's all about, and then something is included in there kind of in a disguised way, and if you vote yes, you're voting yes for more than one issue. And so the bundling is problematic.
So they're taking one issue, piggybacking it on another issue to either kill the issue or vote it through.
Exactly. Just to
that's a political orchestration. And
you could call it that, absolutely, absolutely. Amendment number 11 repeals the state's ability to prohibit non-citizens from buying, owning, or selling property. This affects Hispanics. If you're not considered an alien or somebody that can become a citizen, you're an ineligible for citizenship type of alien, then this amendment would repeal the state of Florida's ability to prohibit you from buying, owning, or selling property.
Okay, what is the definition of that alien category? If you are prohibited from being a citizen, why would you be prohibited from being a citizen?
An alien ineligible for citizenship is somebody that has something in their background that would not allow their petition for citizenship to be granted. So you would remain a resident, or you would not be permitted to become a resident and just be on a visa and have to go back. So that type of alien, of non-citizen, would be precluded from owning, selling, or buying property in Florida.
Okay.
And then finally, we have the last two. Amendment 12 prohibits public officials from lobbying during their terms and for 6 years after their terms are over. We know that a lot of Hispanics like to run for public office, especially school boards, etc. We're trying to promote Hispanics into being more involved in the political process, but this would, if this amendment goes through, if you're a public official, you will not be able to lobby during your term in 6 years. Currently, you could, the restriction is only 2 years after you leave office where you cannot lobby. And there's, valid arguments for prohibiting that. Obviously, the issue with lobbying while you're in office is that you will be taking advantage of your position as a public officer for personal gain, and also, if we want to limit the influence of industry into our legislature, this is a good way to do it. Amendment number 13 ends dog racing in Florida. There's a lot of Florida dog racing enthusiasts. If you know, down in South Florida, the Hialeah and the dog racetracks are very popular, but this amendment would end them by December of 2020. There would be no more wagering, even though the racetracks don't have to close. They could do some other type of wagering or conversion into casinos or some sort of other gaming, but not dog racing. The animal rights organizations obviously are behind the proposal, but the Florida Greyhound Association has sued to remove the amendment from the ballot. And in this case, there's a Leon County judge that ruled to remove it from the ballot. The case got appealed, went to the Supreme Court, and they reversed it. So now it's back on the ballot. So we will see what ends up happening, but that is the last amendment. Hispanics all over the state need to be aware of the fact that the message that I want to highlight today is be aware of the fact that these bundled amendments 6 through 13, excluding number 8 that was eliminated, they deal with more than one issue. You have to read, you have to take your time to study them, because again, if you vote for one thing but you're not really
Or you can agree, that's what I was about to say, you can agree with the first part
Correct.
of an amendment and disagree with the second part of the amendment, and then what do?
Then you'll have to vote no, because if you're then not approving something that you're not really
So in other words, they can bundle an amendment because this is set up by a leaning Republican board. They can create an amendment in order to kill an amendment by attaching something to it that they know people will not vote for.
Yes. If you can play that logic in your mind, absolutely.
Well, that's what I see is happening.
That can be orchestrated. There's an argument that that could definitely be the case.
Because why would you bundle amendments that are totally unrelated to each other? There's no reason, because all it does is confuse voters.
Correct. And that is why, I mean, I'm an attorney, and I'm not trying to promote litigation here, but it is our citizens' right to challenge these things in court so that it's not confusing to...
I'm kind of involved in community activism, but I'm not going to take anybody to court, the committee to court. I'm not going to sue. It's going to cost me money, time.
Will do. And
So,
the League of Women Voters...
well, the League of Women Voters is an organization that's funded and structured.
Correct. If you have the funding to do that, you take on the challenge, and they were successful. Amendment 8 was removed from the ballot, and that would have mandated term limits on school board members to 8 years. That would have allowed the state to create public schools when currently only local school boards can create public schools, and that would have required schools to teach civic literacy. That's stuff that's already in the books, stuff that does not need to be put into the Constitution. So to end, we don't need to put everything in our Constitution. We have a legislature that creates statutes and laws that are enforceable. We don't need to necessarily include everything in the Constitution. And that is what these amendments are. People need to understand that we're not trying to create laws. We're trying to attach them to the state's Constitution. What is the need for that? That should be the basic question. And then based on what you read and what you learn about these different amendments, then you vote yes or no.
Okay. That's it. You got it down pat? All right, we just covered all of these amendments that are coming up in the November election. If you have any questions, you can call, no, better yet, email the email address at the bottom of your screen right now. And if you have any questions, we'll try to get them answered. Okay? We're going to take a break right now. Thank you, Marie. We really appreciate you being here. And we're going to take a break, and then we'll be right back. Step up to craft beer. Taino Light Lager has a crisp, refreshing Caribbean-style flavor. Boricua Craft Ale, full-bodied flavor for the true beer drinker. Stop drinking beer water. Taino Craft Light Lager and Boricua Strong Craft Ale. Feel the rhythm and come up to craft beer.
Welcome back to Hispanic TV, and I'm your host this evening, Diana Joseph. And I am so excited to have this dynamic husband and wife team duo, Ingrid and Tyrone Adams. And they are with the Francoeur, I hope I pronounced that correctly, did I?
Yes, you did.
Okay, law firm. It's a family-owned business in Orlando that was actually founded by Ingrid, who is from Haiti. And they have eyes on the community, and their interests happen to be with international human rights. But their law firm also covers civil rights matters, divorce, accident, immigration. Looks like you just cover a vast amount of areas in law, in your expertise and so on.
Yes, we do.
Okay, wonderful. So what I wanted to do, and the reason I'm so excited to have you both here today, is because I wanted to talk a little bit about the immigration and civil rights challenges that we are facing internationally, nationally, and locally here. So one of the questions I wanted to start off with, there is a vast amount of challenges facing our country between immigration and civil rights today. But can you share with us, Ingrid, I'll start with you, some of the challenges that you see happening right here in our state?
Yes, well, as you know, immigration is the hot topic right now with this new administration. The focus is very much on immigration. So what I'm seeing right now, for instance, is they just introduced a new policy with USCIS. There's different branches of immigration. Okay. You have the court, you have USCIS, and you have ICE. You have the Border Patrol. There's many branches. Okay. So USCIS is implementing a new rule right now. Basically, when you mail out a petition, there's so many different type of applications that you can send out to USCIS. Mm-hmm. It could be a petition for someone to be, I have a husband. I want my husband to become a green card holder. I'm a U.S. citizen, so I'm going to petition for my husband, and my husband going to apply for a visa to become a green card holder. Mm-hmm. So, and many different forms, visa, F1 visas, like for students, different form of visas. Mm-hmm. So, it used to be when you send a petition or an application, if you needed documents that you didn't send with the initial application, you can go ahead, the immigration will send you back a letter stating, hey, we received your application, however, we are missing this evidence, this documents, and we need you to send those documents to us by a certain date. This is called request for evidence. Mm-hmm. And now they are claiming they don't really have to do that anymore. They don't have to give you a heads up and tell you, hey, we need more evidence to support your application. They can just basically, from the beginning, just deny your application totally.
Wow.
So it's very important that people, I understand not everyone has attorneys mm-hmm. to help them with the application. If you don't have the money to hire an attorney, if you are going to do this on your own, it's important that you make sure that you have all your application, all the evidence to support your application together with your application at the same time. The first time, initially when you're sending everything, make sure you send everything together, because it's going to be a situation where you're going to be denied. From the beginning, you're not going to have the opportunity to rectify the situation.
So once the application is denied, will they have to start the process over, or they won't even allow them to start the process over?
The good thing about the immigration, you can, for most part, you can start the process over. Mm-hmm. So, but the problem is more money. So it's like for every application, you're looking at $500, $1,000. So it's spending more money, having to redo it all over again.
And hoping not to get denied.
Not to get denied. And it's not good when they look in your record, oh, we see that it was denied before, and it's always, it's not a good thing either to make sure, it's always important to make sure you get it right the first time around.
So Tyrone is also a member of or a chair, I should say, of with the N.A.A.C.P as myself, and he is actually the chair of legal redress. And I know in your position, Tyrone, that you are doing a lot to try and help educate the community on different processes like this, maybe getting them help through these community events, educating them, showing them what they can do, and sometimes having attorneys available that will help them walk through the process. Am I correct?
That is true, yes. And there are several different aspects of civil rights that we're covering with the N.A.A.C.P. Mm-hmm. It includes housing, it includes criminal justice system, it includes voting, and environment issues and other issues. One of the issues that is right now, of course, a very big issue, especially in Florida, but not just in Florida, has to do with voting. Mm-hmm. So one of the constitutional amendments that is going to be on the ballot, as we are anticipating in November, has to do with allowing people who used to be felons, who used to be convicted of a felony, allowing them to vote again after their return from their prison sentence. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We have 50 states in USA, and there's right now only 3 states, to my knowledge, that still have this system where after you have finished your 2 or 3 year, or in some cases 25-year sentence, mm-hmm. After you're done with the punishment that the court ordered, you are still not allowed to go back to voting. And that is a very big problem in Florida, among other states. In Florida, for example, it's said to be about 1.5 million people who have lost their vote because of it.
Wow.
And if we look at all the last elections, whether it was the Bush election 10 years ago, or this election, or that election, many of these elections then may not be decided by one vote, but they may be decided by 100 votes,
Of
or
course.
by 5,000 votes. And when there's 1 million votes out there that could go either way, then it can change the landscape drastically. So this is very important. It's also important because many of the people who have been denied their right to vote are people of color, black people, Hispanics, and so this is something that affects particular communities more so than others.
Of course, yeah, of course.
One of the things that people would like to do in Florida, when you have been a felon and you want to get your right to vote back, you have to petition. The way it currently works, you have to petition the governor basically for getting your civil rights back, your voting rights back.
Wow.
But the law requires you to wait at least 5 years, some people 7 years, to even send that application. Then it usually takes an average of 10 years before that application that you've sent is being heard. So it's going to take you about 15 years before your voice is heard. And then once you get in front of this panel, the panel doesn't have, like judges do, a rule, a law that says in this situation you have to grant it, in this situation you have to deny it. It's completely voluntary based on what the governor feels like that day. And so you can go in front of that panel. After 15, you'll be in jail for 1 year and a day as a felony. Then you wait 15 more years, so you're 16 years without voting, and then you're in front of this panel and it's being denied. So these are things that are very important.
Of course.
And what people can do, what we can do, one of the most important things, what also the N.A.A.C.P is trying to show to the people, is that we have to change the laws. We have to change the way the system works. And there's different ways of going about it. One is to vote, and not just the big election that everybody's talking about in the news for the president, but for the elections that may not seem to matter as much when you look at it from a distance, but it really matters, where there's local county commissioners and education board, all these people, judges that run for office, all these people that people don't really know their names, and they're not really big advertised on TV, but they have positions of power and they make a lot of important decisions. And one of them is the state attorney, another one is governor. Governor is a little bit easier to see.
Yes.
But all of these things can be changed through voting. And one of the things we have to do is change the voting system. Another thing that the N.A.A.C.P obviously has been pushing for many years, has to do with the criminal justice reform. One part I just mentioned, other aspects of the criminal justice reform include the fact that certain crimes are being disproportionately punished by the police. There's police brutality on TV and all these things. And yes, it is definitely clear that we have so many hundreds of crimes every day, and the number of police brutality may be just a small percentage of those. But even though they may be a smaller percentage, they are very important crimes, because it is part of the government that is supposed to protect you is really not protecting you, is doing the opposite, and people are using their power, their position of power, to
Affect our human rights.
affect our human rights and our civil rights. And I am very happy to know that all of these things are now slowly changing, though. We have a state attorney not in Orlando, in Orange County, who is trying to implement some changes that included, for just a few months ago, they started a new rule, a new guideline, that people should not be sent to jail for a bond. With a bond, if they can't afford it, you should try to, all those smaller crimes, if it's not a violent crime, try to stay away from that bond issue in the first place, so that you don't have what we call the debtor's prison, that people have to pay fines for parking or for small bond amounts, anything, and then they have to stay in prison because they simply can't afford the bond. That's one of the problems now in our country, that some people are trying to change, is to get rid of the bond system completely. Me personally, I'm all for it, getting rid of the bond system, because what the bond system means is, if you have $10 million, then you can pay for the bond. If you don't have the money, you have to stay in jail. People just have to stay in jail many times just because they're poor, even though somebody else who committed the very same crime can be set free.
And not only that, they also have, many of them plead to the charge, even though they might be innocent, because they want to get out of jail. So they would plead to the charge or not wait for a defense because they're going to sit in jail for so long because they don't have the money. So they would plead from the beginning, and so that's also like a due process that they don't have.
Well, it seems, just even touching base and discussing these topics, it is just so wide and vast, the amount of concerns that we have out there as Hispanic community, as a Black community, concerns that really we need to do whatever we can to voice it in different ways. I need to have you all back on because this segment definitely is not long enough to cover a lot of these, segments or issues that we want to talk about and make the community aware of, especially, dealing with the immigration policies. I'm sure that there's millions, especially because Florida is such a diverse state. We're a melting pot of beautiful people from beautiful cultures all over the world. And, it's important that when we have community channels like this, that we're able to explain to them, and let them know, some of the challenges they can face and what they can do in order to, get the benefits that, is due them.
Yes.
And basically make sure that they are practicing and having all the human rights that, we have the privileges of having by living here in the United States. But, can you talk or tell us a little bit, Tyrone, about some events that you maybe have coming up that they may find, interesting, so they can get more information and also have an opportunity to meet you and Ingrid?
One event that is coming up that touches on civil rights is an event that takes place in Orlando on October 12th, and it's going to be at the Berry Law School in Orlando. And several topics that are going to be discussed include International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and United Nations. And why that is very important is because some of these things that we've been talking about, the voting disenfranchisement, the voting system in general, the criminal justice reform, but also things like housing and not having the money to pay for your housing. You have minimum wage jobs, but you can't pay for housing. So, which is why many people now advocate for the $15 minimum wage, which the number itself by itself doesn't do it, because then if the rent increases, we have the same problem. So it has to be the right relationship. So all of these issues, though, are issues that also exist in many other countries, and they're also existing in a way that other countries can put pressure on our country by following the rules. The United States doesn't live in a vacuum, just like any other country doesn't. They have agreements, treaties with other countries, and in these treaties they say, we agree to do this, this, and the other. And the other countries can put pressure on the United States, just as the United States can put pressure on other countries and does all the time, to make sure that the countries hold each other accountable to follow those rules and treaties. And this event is a lot about how to hold our country accountable to do what's right.
All right. Well, we just have a few more seconds left. So what I would like is if you can let us, the community, know when again that event will be held, and also maybe an email address if they have further questions about immigration or some concerns that they have, and be able to contact you.
Yes, and my email address is Ingrid, INGRID, at funcore.law. It's FOANCOEUR.law. That's my email address.
And you can reach our law firm at 407-999-9990. And the event I just mentioned about human rights, again, is going to be on October 12th in Orlando at the Berry Law University.
And also keep in mind the issue with voting rights will be on the ballot this November. So it's important to go out and vote and make sure to do your best to restore the felons' civil rights.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank all of you for sharing your evening with us. I am disappointed that we didn't get enough time to go ahead and discuss these topics further, but I'm definitely going to have you all back. And thank you again for sharing your time with us, and you have a good evening.
Thank you.